Hey guys, I'm here again to do another character review. Like I mentioned in my last video, my friend and I are doing reviews of Cinderella from, of course, Cinderella, and Snow White from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. My friend did his Snow White review yesterday, I did my Snow White review a few days before that, and he did his Cinderella review a few days before that, and I'm here today to do my Cinderella review. Anyway, the complaints that Cinderella seems to get are, she's passive, she never stands up for herself, she waits around for her dreams to happen rather than doing anything herself. She has no personality, she's a Mary Sue, she's boring, she's a damsel in distress, she promotes domestic and child abuse, she marries a guy she just met, she's a bad role model, she's anti-feminist, and she's such a weak character that they tried to fix her in her movie in the third film. Obviously not my opinion. Okay, starting with the whole she's passive thing. Yeah, she is a passive character. But does that really make her a bad character? I mean, most of the early Disney heroines, like Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora, they were all pretty passive. But I don't really see how that made them bad characters. And like my friend mentioned, Odette from The Swan Princess, she's also pretty passive. But something that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration is that a lot of Cinderella's strength comes from really more from her mind and her heart than the physical strength. I mean, she's had to put up with a lot of physical, emotional, verbal abuse, yet she maintains a very cheerful and positive attitude. That takes a lot of strength. I mean, I can't imagine myself maintaining such a positive attitude, having to put up with all the stuff that she has. So, I definitely think that she's a plenty strong character, even if she is a bit passive. A lot stronger than most people give her credit for. And I think that people need to take into consideration that being a strong character doesn't always mean wielding a sword and punching people and kicking butt. And the whole not standing up for herself, that kind of goes hand in hand with being passive. Yeah, she does stand up for herself, definitely. Not as much as a lot of the modern Disney heroines, like, Ariel, Jasmine, or even Belle. And yeah, Belle's also a pretty passive character. But yeah, not as much as the modern Disney heroines, but she definitely stands up for herself. Like my friend mentioned, there's the scene where her stepfamily are trying to get her out of going to the ball, when they first get the letter for it, and she says, "Well, why not? After all, I'm still a member of the family, and it says, by royal command, every eligible maiden should attend." So yeah, she definitely stands up for herself in the film. And especially when you get into, like, the third movie, um, where there's a lot more danger and actual and actual physical threats shown. She stands up for herself a lot more in that. I mean, in the first movie, in the first movie, you never really saw her in any sort of threatening situation, unless you count, like, the stepsisters tearing the dress apart. So she didn't really have many places to stand up for herself. She waits around for her dreams to happen rather than doing anything for herself. A lot of people don't take into consideration the time period the movie was made in and the time period that it was supposed to take place in. Like I mentioned in my Snow White video, women really had few to no rights. And even in the time period that the movie was made in, women were pretty much expected to be stay-at-home housewives. But especially in the time period that the story was set in, women had very few rights, and if she decided to leave home and make her dreams come true, the most that she could expect is becoming a servant in someone else's home, becoming a prostitute. I mean, she has no money to her name. What do you think she's going to do? Start her own business? And I mean, if she decided to become a servant to someone else, she doesn't know the family. I mean, for all she knew, that they'd be more abusive to her than her stepfamily was. So, I mean, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And, of course, prostitution, I think everybody knows the dangers involved in that. So, I mean, like with Snow White, and like with Jane from Peter Pan 2, please take the time period into consideration. It's not like today, where a woman can start her own business and make a fortune at it, or even start working at the local business alongside alongside the men who work there. And really back then, the only thing, the only way that a woman made any money at all is by either her father's name or her husband's name. And now that her father is dead, and she's been reduced to a servant girl, she has no way of proving that she's the daughter of a nobleman. So that's something else that people need to take into consideration. She has no personality. While I wouldn't say she has the most interesting personality in the world, I wouldn't say she has no personality. I mean, there's a difference between having a personality that isn't super interesting and having no personality. I mean, yeah, to me, you can definitely tell that she has a personality. I mean, you can tell that she's very sweet and caring, and even somewhat sarcastic, like when she says, maybe we should interrupt the music lesson. You know, she can be a bit mean-spirited and that sort of thing. And very motherly, and and maternal towards the animals and that sort of thing. I mean, she's definitely not a super complex character, but I mean, there are characters like Lola Bunny and Ilsa that have very, very little screen time, and they still have they still have a personality. So, I mean, with Snow White being the main character of her movie, I definitely think she has a personality. She's like I said, she's not a complex character. She's pretty much the standard, you know, kind heroine wanting to make her dreams come true. But that doesn't mean she has no personality. She's a Mary Sue. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I wouldn't say she's totally flawless. I mean, one of her flaws, I would say, is that she's probably a little too trusting and forgiving. Like how she immediately forgave Anastasia in the in the two sequel films. But I imagine that that their goal with her was to make her more of a role model character rather than a realistic, flawed, relatable character like with Jasmine or Ariel or Melody, Scamp, those kind of characters. And I mean, being a Mary Sue that's pretty much flawless doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad character. I mean, that's pretty much what Dell is, and I still like her as a character. I don't necessarily relate to her, but I still like her as a character. And I just have one question. Why is it whenever there are flawed characters like, Ariel and Uncle Scrooge and those kind of characters, everybody complains about them being too flawed and horrible role models, but whenever there are Mary Sue characters like Snow White and Cinderella, people complain about them being Mary Sues. I I don't get that. Just just seems a little nitpicky to me. She's boring. Like I said, she's not the most interesting character in the world, but and she doesn't have the most complex and she doesn't have the most complex personality, but I wouldn't call her boring. She's still a lot of fun to watch, but boring is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, to me, a character that has has the kind of adventures that she does in the movie is a lot of fun to watch. I mean, while I suppose I can see boring as a... Well, I suppose I can understand why some people today might see her boring. I never saw her that way. She's a bit dated. She's definitely dated, and her personality may seem a bit flatter than the average modern heroine, but I don't really see that as being boring. To each their own. Like I said, boring's in the eye of the beholder. And I've always personally liked her because Well, because she came across as a sweet, nice, motherly figure, and I've always found her enjoyable to watch, but mm, now that's your personal opinion. She's a damsel in distress. Um, how? I mean, the closest thing to a damsel in distress moment that I remember her having in the movie is when she gets locked in her bedroom so that she can't try on the glass slipper, and and the mice have to get the key to her. Uh, but to me, she seems plenty capable of taking care of herself and her animal friends. I mean, like I mentioned before, she's very mentally and emotionally strong, having to endure all of the abuse. But she's not necessarily physically strong. So I don't really see her having a moment where she's in distress as her being a useless damsel in distress. I mean, for that matter, every character in existence is a useless damsel in distress. And like my friend mentioned, if you want to see a useless damsel in distress in in the Snow White or in the Cinderella franchise, look at the mouse Gus. I mean, he's always getting into trouble and having to be saved by either Cinderella or the other mice. And in the third movie, she does toughen up and take action. So to me, the whole she's a useless damsel in distress, that's very nitpicky and not really a legitimate complaint. Because, like I said, almost every character has had some moment, some damsel or dude in distress moment. She promotes domestic and or child abuse. How? Because in the movie it's portrayed negatively. I've never read the book or watched the movie, but if you ask me, 50 Shades of Grey definitely promotes it more than Cinderella does. And no, I never plan on reading it or watching it. I've just seen the commercial for the movie, and just that was a... Well, just knowing the topic of it, but just seeing the commercial, that showed plenty of abuse for me. And anyway, the it's shown in a negative light, so I don't really see how it's promoting it. That's like when when I did my Uncle Scrooge review, and they were saying that he promoted greed. And anytime something is shown in a negative light, whether it's Uncle Scrooge having a flaw of greediness and being ashamed of it, or Cinderella having to endure abuse and not enjoying it, it's not promoting it, people. Just because the hero or the heroine does something or has to put up with something doesn't mean it promotes it. It only promotes it if they're showing it in a positive light. And yes, they definitely showed that she wasn't happy with the way that she was living and the abuse she was getting. I mean, after the stepsisters tore her dress apart, you show her they show her running out to the garden and crying. So I don't really see how it's promoting it. Moving on. She marries a guy she just met. It's frickin' Disney and a frickin' fairy tale. I don't know what else to say. Like I said in my Snow White review and in my Ariel review, but both of them marry or run away with a guy that they just met. And Frozen is the only time that they ever even mention that that's a stupid thing to do, so I don't know what you expect from Disney fairy tales. So to me, that sounds more like a problem with Disney fairy tales than with Cinderella. And, yeah, even Aurora does it too. I mean, before she found out that she was betrothed to Prince Philip, she was planning to marry the nice stranger that she met in the woods. So, yeah, obviously, while marrying somebody or running off with somebody that you just met in real life is a really stupid thing to do, it's fairy tale logic. You really have to cut it some slack, because that's what happened in all of the old fairy tales, and that's how a lot of the Disney adaptations are. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I've already covered it in a ton of videos. She's a bad role model. Well, I wouldn't say that she's an ideal role model. I wouldn't say that she's an ideal role model for little girls today. I don't really see that a cheerful, optimistic, motherly figure like Cinderella is a bad role model. I mean, yeah, she's not the ideal one. since she does put up with abuse and isn't the best at standing up for herself, and she's dated. But there are far worse ones. I mean, just to be happy that your little girl isn't using like a villainess for a role model or something like that. I mean, there really aren't any of the Disney princesses that I would say are awful role models. So, some are better than others. I mean, I think that the first three, Snow White, Cinderella, and Aurora, are probably the best ones, since they were intended to be role models and not flawed characters. Belle also, since like I said before, she's kind of the Mary Sue, since she's kind of the flawless Mary Sue role model of the modern princesses. But yeah, I mean, even the flawed modern ones like Ariel and Jasmine and Mulan, I wouldn't say that any of them are bad, terrible role models for children to have. And I mean, just be happy that your little girl isn't using like a villainess for a role model. Or some of the bratty kids that are on Disney Channel today, like the kids from Jessie, and thank goodness they're airing their last season of it. Thank goodness. So, while she may not be the ideal role model, there are far worse ones. She's anti-feminist. Depends on what you mean by feminist. Because I've met several feminists that pretty much want women to be the dominant gender, and if you're referring to that kind of feminist, then yeah, she's anti-feminist, and yeah, I'm happy that she is that kind of anti-feminist. But if you're referring to feminist in the sense of just females are strong, women are strong, are strong, independent people, then I don't really see that she's anti-feminist. Again, it was made in a time and was supposed to take place in a time when women didn't really have any rights. And she was a very strong female character for her time, and especially for the time that it was supposed to take place in. And I personally consider myself a feminist in the sense that I want equality for women and women to be strong and independent. And I don't see Snow White as an offensive, or Cinderella, sorry. I don't see Snow White or Cinderella as offensive man-dependent girls like a lot of the feminists see them. I see them as products of their time. And I see them both as very strong, female characters that came from a time period where women didn't have many rights. So to the feminists who all believe that women should be the dominant gender, and that both Snow White and Cinderella are anti-feminist, cool it. And finally, she's such a weak character that they tried to fix her and her movies' problems in the third film. I don't really see that. I think that what they did was try to expand her personality and show that when it calls for it, she can really stand up for herself and take charge of things. And so they put her in much more dangerous situations than she was in the first movie. And I think they also tried to expand on the other characters' personalities, especially like Anastasia. So, to me, that just seems kind of like a real whiny complaint from big fans of the first movie and feminists. I mean, if you don't like the third movie, just don't watch it. That's my advice. I mean, there are plenty of Disney sequels that I dislike and I ignore. So, I mean, I think it was more an attempt to expand on the characters' personalities rather than to fix the problems. If it was a successful attempt or a failed attempt, that's your call. I mean, I personally like the movie. It and that one segment in the second movie moved Anastasia up to my favorite character in the Cinderella franchise. Anyway, while Cinderella isn't a big favorite character of mine, I do like her a lot, and I see why she has her fans. She's my sixth favorite Disney princess, after Snow White, Tiana, Elsa, Mulan, and Ariel. And excuse me. Sorry, I stutter. And I do like her. I think that she's a sweet, motherly figure. Not the most complex character in the world, but still a very nice character. And that about wraps up this review. The links to my first video and my friend's 2 videos will be in the comment section below. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Bye. See you next time.